Welcome to the Endurance Horse Podcast, where endurance riders from all across the globe gather, sharing their stories, goals, and progress as they train for and compete in endurance events at every level. So kick off your shoes, pull up a chair, and listen as we gather around the virtual campfire and listen to friends from across the world.
Hello, and welcome to episode 12 of the Endurance Horse Podcast. This is your host, Christina Hyke, and
this is Jim.
The last episode was in September, and we took October off. We knew we were going to have a busy month, so that's why I did 3 in a row right away. But I'm excited that we made it to 12 episodes. That was my goal. I started in March, and I thought, well, if I could get 12 done, that would be a good thing. So it's just after Thanksgiving here. We hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving.
The weather is getting colder.
It is getting colder. There's a little bit of snow floating around today here in Wisconsin. Jim and I just did another 5K in Madison on Thanksgiving Day. That was fun. We got the time we wanted to do. Of course, there was no horse involved, but
Yep.
Yeah.
We went out and did the turkey trot and then came home and ate turkey.
Yes, we did. So guys, we're just going to keep this short and wrap it up. I hope you enjoy episode 12 of the Endurance Horse Podcast.
I know I'm looking forward to it. See y'all later. Bye.
This is Ken.
Hi, Ken. This is Chris, Endurance Horse Podcast. I've had some pretty interesting people say they'd be on the podcast if I would just call them.
Well, I'm a newbie, so I have a lot to say about my first attempt.
You're not new to endurance events, right? You did the Ironman?
I did the Ironman in Hawaii, and I did the Western States Endurance Run, and I've done 50-mile runs and things like that. But, yeah, it was really amazing how I got involved because my wife, we have a horse ranch here, and she raises Hanoverians and trains them, and my daughters have been riding horses in Pony Club and competing forever. And when I ran the Chicago Marathon a couple of years ago and then climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and my hip was really hurting really bad, and I went to see an orthopedic surgeon, and he says, you need to stop running.
Wow.
And at that time, my daughter said, we've been talking about doing the TEVIS forever, and watching the finish. And my daughter says, Dad, we're going to do the TEVIS. And that was my chance. I said, okay, I've got, all these great opportunities here. My wife has all these horses, and my daughter knows how to ride. And my daughter and I are going to do this together. So that was kind of like, God saying, hey, this is your chance, do it.
So how has riding been for your hip? Has that been okay?
Yeah, it hurts. It's kind of amazing. I need to have my hip done, and it probably hurt me. It hurts my rides because I can't jump off and jump on the horse as easy as others. It's really amazing because since I ride a Hanoverian, they're big horses. My hip's a little bit wider. And also, I ride my daughter's Arab, and it's a smaller horse, and that feels a little better. And if I ride with a saddle, it feels better too. So you kind of, you take care of it. And I got to have my hip done sometimes. Now, I got to tell you, Chris, because people ask me this, what's harder, the Ironman in Hawaii or the Western States or the TEVIS. And I thought the Ironman in Hawaii, yes, it was difficult. And the Western States is very difficult. There's no question. I thought the TEVIS was much more difficult. Yes, there was massive heat this year. I get it. But also just having to take care of your horse. It's just not taking care of you. You got to guess what your horse is thinking and doing. And, you need water, electrolytes, and make sure your horse is being fed. And you kind of take the second fiddle. In fact, I even had to have a list of stuff for me, how much I had to drink. I laminated a drinking plan and an electrolyte plan for myself and a pace plan because I got so involved with the horse, I forgot to take care of myself. I found that out doing 50-mile rides. So I really think that TEVIS is much harder than all those others because you got to care for someone else.
So how did the TEVIS become a goal? It was your daughter's idea?
Yeah, since we live here near Auburn, we would go every year and watch the finish of the TEVIS. And I kind of thought at one point, my daughter and I, hey, let's do this, Alicia. Well, it was a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, on Christmas, my daughter says, we're going to do this, Dad. This is when I had the hip problems. And we set the goal of doing it. And I knew that, and I don't take this lightly, that Western States Trail could chew you up and spit you out. It's really a difficult trail. So I knew we had to train intensely. I started actually, I had ridden many, many years ago, but I had to take up riding again. And my daughter and my wife put me on horses, on different horses, and they put me in the arena, and they worked on my skill. They had doing some jumping. They go, Dad, we got to work on your skill. It's really bad. So it's really taken a while, but I get to now get back on the trail, and yes, ride with my daughter. I get to go on the Western States Trail and see all the beautiful scenery and just enjoy it. And but yeah, that was like a year and a half ago, year and 8 months ago that we set that goal, and my daughter and I trained hard and made plans and set the rides. We had to have the 50-mile rides and put those together and made a plan way in advance. And when we got to the starting line of the TEVIS, it was a year and a half in the making of training, intensely. So it was a lot of fun.
So what do you think, what did this ride mean to you?
Oh, well, for one thing, two things. For one thing, it was my daughter. My daughter's 22 years old. And, you always want your kids to do something or, to learn from, a father to a daughter. And one of the things I wanted my daughter to learn was you could do tough things. And, and for me as a father, it was great that I could spend time with my daughter and train and do something that was very, very difficult. And my daughter did finish in 23 hours. But for me, it was something, it's like a spiritual experience because I love that trail so much. I always come back and tell my wife, this is where God hangs out, It's so beautiful. The smells, the sights, the water, all that stuff. And I get to go out there and just have a great time and enjoy all that. And now I'm doing it on my horse, and my horse is, my horse is a personality. Like everyone knows how much you love your horse and the personality your horse has, and you kind of just enjoy it together with your horse. Like people run with their dogs, well, I get to go out with my horse.
I like that. That's great. So can you tell me a little bit about the horse you rode at TEVIS?
Yes, my horse is a Hanoverian, and my wife bred and raised and trained it. And it's trained for dressage, and I think it's gone to the second level. It's done 100 jumpers, and I think it's 3.9 or something jumping.
Wow.
That and as what happened is the horse just did not like that arena work. Yes, the horse would do it, but after a while, the horse would just get, I'm tired of this. My wife says, why don't you try this horse on the trail? And I tried it on the trail, and she loves the trail. In fact, she loves it a little bit too much because she's looking around. We're going around Tucker Point on Western States, and she's like looking and going, oh, isn't that neat? Look at that canyon down there. Oh, and I'm like, Fanny. Her nickname's Fanny. I didn't give it to her, and I don't like that name, but it's Fantasia. But anyway, so I have to like go, Fan, look where you're going. And she's looking around. In fact, yesterday we were out riding, and she rides along right next to the, side of the cliff. And I'm like giving her a leg yield and pulling her head, and she's still like, I don't like to get near that bank, so I'm next to the side here. And she's looking around at the water and listening to the water, and she loves it. She's actually pretty old. She's an 18-year-old Hanoverian, but she's got low miles, which is good. Hams, and she's got great big muscles. Here's my daughter's horse, which is a very accomplished Arab. It's got these little tiny muscles, thin skin. So when we climb up Devil's Thumb, the 36 switchbacks on a hot day, that horse just flies up there. It's got little tiny muscles that, push it up, way up there fine, and doesn't create a lot of heat. And here's my horse that has these big old muscles that create lots of heat, and the skin is thick and it doesn't dissipate the heat well. So I have to get up there to the top of Devil's Thumb and throw lots of water on her to cool her off. So she's not a very logical horse for it, but she's my little Fanny girl. Yeah, we're going to try again.
So what was your greatest lesson you learned at TEVIS?
Oh, boy. Well, since I got pulled at at Last Chance, my greatest lesson that I learned was you have to be constantly on all the time. I rode a number of 50s, back-to-back 50s, and I was just kind of, would ride and enjoy and cruise along, which is fine, but in the TEVIS, you can't do that. And I took off, and I was just having a good time, and it wasn't until I got to high camp when I realized I was, like, pushing the, time limit, and I can't believe it, just so close, so, early on. And I said, wow, you really have to start picking it up. And at that point, I got up to Watson Monument, up to the top. And I will tell you, we flew through Granite Chief Wilderness. That is one tough ride, and we took big chances. I was with two other ladies, and we knew we were way behind, and we had to make up time. And then we got to Red Star Ridge, and one of the ladies actually got pulled, and I think it was because Granite Chief, we were riding so aggressively, and getting into Robinson Flat for the hour, we were still pushing the time limit, and then on into Last Chance. Now, you asked me what I got out of it, is the biggest thing was you have to keep on pushing, and I thought that first 50 miles was going to be something that I could just cruise. And I thought the most difficult part of the trail was going to be the next 18 miles, Last Chance to Forest Hill, because those are the three canyons, with Devil's Thumb, down the Swinging Bridge up to Devil's Thumb, and down, the next canyon and up to Michigan Bluff, and then the Easy Canyon, which is Volcano Canyon. But, the first 50 miles, believe it or not, in those first 50 miles, we climbed, in fact, my GPS watch told me we climbed 6,302 feet, and we descended 8,727 feet, which is really, really amazing, considering, that's not a normal, that would be a difficult 50 mile, and you got 50 more. And is what I found really interesting is I was moving, the hour at Robinson and the other, stops, I took minimal amount of time, I thought, because I knew I had to keep on going. My GPS watch told me that I had an average moving pace of 5.6 miles an hour, and I thought that was adequate to finish because, if you figure it out, how long does it take you to go 100 miles and, an average 5 miles an hour, and you're going to finish in 20 hours, but then you've got your hour holds, and then stops. But you cannot do that. You have to 5.6 miles an hour, and that was only 5 minutes below the cutoff time. So you really, really have to push. And in Granite Chief, it's a lot more technical than you could ever imagine. And we took so much risk. We went through there. A lot of times it was so rocky we couldn't see the trail because it was overgrown and going through water. And we took chances through there. And, boy, you have to push. That was my big thing.
Would you do it again?
Yeah. I got to talk to my wife about that. My wife says absolutely not. But I got some unfinished business to take care of there. And yes, I definitely want to do it again. And I'm going to, there's some retooling and readjusting, step up my rides. And when I do 50 milers, it can't just be, relaxing. I have to step it up and say, okay, we're going to really move out, because there were so many times in the last 50 miler I did the fire up, and I could have been really moving out, and I was riding with some people, and I said, we'll finish okay in the time, and we did, but you can't do that. You have to start saying the horse can be well trained, but physically I need to be well trained too, because like I say, that first 50 miles, it is, 6,000 feet climb and almost 9,000 down, that's pretty intense 50 miles. Very technical course, and you have to have a body that's well trained to be able to do that. Just jumping on your horse, every weekend probably is not going to do it.
What did it mean for you to get to watch your daughter, her buckle? What was that?
Yeah. Oh man, I was. In fact, when she crossed the finish line, in fact, I saw a whole bunch of friends of mine, because I circled around and I went to Forest Hill, and some of the people I was riding with, I came in and I rooted them in after I got pulled, and then at the finish line, and I came and watched those guys and rooted them in because I'd ridden with them. But when my daughter came in, I was like crying. It was really an emotional thing. And when she received her buckle, I just gave her a big old hug, and I was crying because, you know, my daughter it's difficult. It's very difficult doing the TEVIS, and it's a big achievement. And at 22 years old, maybe she understands that it's a big achievement, but it's a big achievement to do that and to ride all night and the difficulties. She was riding and on the California Street Trail. It's really funny. I don't know how you do this, but her horse, the blanket came off, or the saddle blanket. It came out. It's like, how do you do that? So she was riding with the saddle on the horse, and is what they had to do. She went to a station, to a watering station, and they took a blanket and folded it, and then put the billets in for the stirrups, and then used that for the blanket on in. And I don't know how she did that, but she had to overcome that, and that was really cool. And she was riding the cutoffs like I was too. And she finished with an hour to spare. Actually, she ended up really moving in the cool night. But it was big. I was crying.
There's a small number of people in the world who have accomplished that feat of finishing the TEVIS. So I think that, like you said, as she gets older, the magic of what she did will sink in even more. Yeah.
I mean, I still think about that, you know, doing the Western States 100-mile run. And now that I can't do it, I mean, I was training. I wanted to do another qualifier. But as time goes on, you go, wow, that was really amazing being able to do that and putting your mind to it and training hard to do it and overcoming the difficulty. And I'm sure as she, you know, time goes on, I mean, she cherishes it now in her buckle and everything. But as time goes on, she's going to go, wow, that was really big. That was really difficult. You know, I could do hard things. She would say, Dad, having kids after this is going to be nothing.
I just think that it's just an awesome gift for a father to give his daughter, to have done all that training with her. I just think that's an amazing gift. One last question for you, which was, what is your advice for anyone who's going to attempt this ride for the first time? What would you think your most valuable piece of advice would be?
Prepare and train intensely, diligently. Don't take it lightly, because, like I say, this trail could eat you up. And, you know, make sure you can find some hills. If possible, come out here and train and have a plan to do it. And when you train with, you know, intensity. Train just not, you know, an easy walking around. I was on the trail, and I heard some ladies talking about doing the TEVIS, and they're just walking around and doing their, you know, 20-mile ride in 5 hours. And I wanted to say, you know, that's not going to cut it. You need to be out there training, having fun doing it. You know, on the TEVIS trail, you walk where you have to walk, but the rest of it you're trotting, or else you're not going to make it with the time.
Sometimes I avoid riding in the heat, but I imagine if you're training for the TEVIS, maybe you might not go out and work hard in the heat, but maybe you still need to get out there.
Yeah, in fact, it's really amazing because another woman, Anne Marie, who actually rode the horse that my daughter has, and she got 19th a couple years ago. And her advice to me, and she's done the TEVIS many times, but her advice to me was, she says, Ken, you're going to hate it, but what you need to do is go out in the heat of the day, and you go out there and train. You're going to hate it. Your horse is going to hate it, but you need to do that, and you need to train. Because I will tell you, it's really amazing, because there's lots of areas that's in the shade in the TEVIS, and it is true. But, boy, I'll tell you, some of those are in the open, and some of those, the wind comes up the side of the hill, and it's like a blast furnace. It is so hot. And it really got to me. I tried using a cooling vest, which worked pretty well for me. And at a, you know, vet stop, I would throw it in the water, then you know, wear it again. But it's so important to you know, hydrate. You know, of course, clipping, you know, your horse, and my horse is really clipped. You know, and get your horse ready for it, and then get yourself ready for it too. But yeah, you need to train in that heat. I really believe that. It's very difficult. It's very hard.
I think if you're smart about it,
I know next year I'm definitely going to ride even when it's hot, and I can tell you I feel a little ashamed to say I didn't do it this year. I think I'm changing my thought process on that.
Yeah, well, you have to train for it because, boy, if you don't train for that heat, you know, when it hits you, when you're out there. In fact, I did a number of canyon rides, and which going from Robinson down to Forest Hill, you know, where you get the three big canyons. And I asked the people, I said, hey, what's the difference between this and the TEVIS? And they said, oh, it's much hotter in the TEVIS. And I was saying, that's crazy because it's a hot day now. But I'll tell you what, that day in the TEVIS, I mean, that's why they only had 42% of the people finish.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I mean, I had a friend of mine who was waiting for me with the crew at Michigan Bluff, and she says, Ken, I saw very experienced horse people, and they said, this is the ride from hell because it's so hot, and their horses were wasted, and they were wasted as riders. And she said, Ken, they are very, very experienced riders with experienced horses, and they said it was very, very difficult. So, and she was trying to encourage me, said, Ken, don't feel bad about pulling out.
How was the smoke to deal with?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was that bad. The funny thing is the dust. I mean, you wear a bandana, you know, because on the trail, there's lots of horses in front of you. In some places, like in the Granite Chief Wilderness, there's like dust that's so thick, and so you wear a bandana, and you just wonder what that does for your horse too, because I mean, your horse is that stuff, and you can't put a bandana on your horse. In fact, my daughter was telling me I still wore my sunglasses, but my daughter said, you had to take my sunglasses off, Dad. It was just filled with dust. I couldn't see anything. So I kind of think that the dust was more of a, you know, consequential than actually the smoke.
I look forward to hearing your story. I don't know if you're going to do it again next year, but I hope you think of us and we can follow up with an interview next year too.
Absolutely. Now, have you done it, or are you going to do it, Kevin?
I told my husband, I said, really, I just had this idea for the podcast. It doesn't mean I'm even a good endurance rider or a good horse, you know, rider at all, but I was really felt driven to figure this out and do it for people. I don't plan on taking sponsors or making any money from this podcast. I just really felt like it was a positive thing I could do for people, but I don't think that disqualifies me from doing the podcast because I'll still be here cheering people on.
Yeah, and you know what is, for instance, Karen Donnelly. She won it a few years ago, and Karen and I have gotten to be, and my daughter's gotten to be friends. But she won it a few years ago, and she only does 50s. And she says now the TEVIS she does every year because it's kind of magical. You know, you got to do the TEVIS.
Hello again, Tara Leroy checking in from Wisconsin. Just thought I would give a little update on my LD progress this year. But first I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed hearing all the TEVIS stories. Really put it in perspective how challenging, not just TEVIS is, but just how challenging our sport in general is. And kudos to all of those who just get through it despite everything that's thrown at them. I have a tendency to say, for me, just getting to a ride with a horse is half the battle. As a parent with 2 kids and a full-time job and a full plate of volunteer and community service, which includes gymnastics, 4-H, and a host of other activities, the time I have left to ride is not nearly as much as I'd like. So for me, getting to a point where I can even think I have a horse that's trained, conditioned, and sound all at the same time and ready to go to a ride is just a big win for me. I think I might have to use a motto that's something like, to get to a ride is half a win, to finish is a bonus. So my plans of doing 3 LDs this year with my mare, Mariah. She's a 14-year-old Anglo-Arab that I'm embarrassed to say I raced and trained, but didn't actually start training her until she was like 10. Thank you, children and life and work, for that. So despite very sporadic and minimal riding, she's made a lot of progress in the last 2 summers. We did our first LD attempt together last year at the Bone Crusher Ride in Palmyra, which just happens to be a few miles from where we live, and it's on trails that we ride and condition in all the time. So it didn't require having the added stress of travel or camping to go there. And unfortunately, that ride ended in a rider option pull at the half, related to some muscle soreness in the rear that I believe was related to a spook at the trailer in the morning where she pulled back and broke a halter, and just kind of went downhill from there. So even though we didn't finish, it was a learning experience for her, and she was able to get a sample of what I hope the future held for us both. I'll just chalk that up as a expensive training ride. So this year, spring was a little late in coming to Wisconsin. I don't do much riding in the wintertime, based on the conditions that I have to deal with, and I don't have indoor facilities to ride in. So it was pretty late when we started actually getting able to ride. So my initial plans in being able to have horses ready to ride in June at an LD just didn't work out for me. One horse was conditioned and came up lame, and the other horse was sound but not conditioned. So poor planning on my part, I guess. So it turns out that our next ride would be Bone Crusher again in July. So that gave us another month of conditioning, and I felt at that time that she was a lot better prepared physically and emotionally to give it a try again. So I was pretty excited. That day before, my daughter Bailey, who's 8, and you'll hear from her I think a little later, we volunteered for the day. It was kind of fun. I always like the opportunity to volunteer. Gave me an opportunity to brush up on all things endurance, since it's been a while since I actually finished a ride. And it was nice to spend the day getting to know ride management. I have to get a shout out to the Ericksons. Amber, you rock. I don't know how you do what you do, but you are my idol. Your whole family is great, and it was really nice to get to spend the day getting to know some new people. I always enjoy scribing for the vets, kind of a free education. I take advantage of it, so that's always fun. And then my daughter and I also took our camera, and we were catching pictures at the outcheck of riders coming in and going out. It was Bailey's first time at a ride, so she had absolutely no idea what to expect. But she learned quickly how nice everyone was, and I appreciate how welcoming everyone was there, and letting Bailey help when she could, and smiling for the camera when she was trying to take their picture. And another bonus of spending the day volunteering was I got to meet some fellow podcasters, so that's always fun when you finally get to put a face to a name and a story that you've heard. So that was fun for me. So Saturday was a lot of fun volunteering and meeting everybody and talking to so many people. So I was really optimistic on Sunday when we saddled up to attempt our second LD ride at Bone Crusher. I felt Mariah was pretty good to go and that we would have a successful day. But unfortunately, when we got to the mid-vet check, she was off in the rear. I was crushed again. But it turned out this year the rocks were unforgiving. And she wasn't the only one that got extremely footsore that day. So I felt a little bit better, but it's still painful. So even though we do the bulk of our training barefoot on those same trails, and I did put hoof protection on her front, I didn't put anything on the rear. She'd never been ridden to the point in the past where rear protection was ever needed. So again, another painful learning experience. But still consider it forward progress. She'd faced some new challenges. Otherwise, she vetted out great. So I'll take what I can get and just chalk it up as another expensive training and conditioning ride. So at this point, we're 0-2. Not exactly how I pictured my triumphant return to endurance. And a little depressing for my daughter's first time to come see mom, and it ends up in us not finishing. So that deflated my bubble a little bit. So when my good friend Chris talked me into going up to the Louise Rydell Brobuster ride a few weeks later, I really wanted to go, but in my heart I wasn't overly confident that it was going to end any better. That ride would involve a bit of a trailer ride and camping, which Mariah had not done any camping yet. So I brought along a pasture mate for her, partly for moral support because he's a seasoned traveler and pretty laid back, and also partly as a backup in case things didn't go as planned with Mariah. Turns out Mariah was the better camper of the two, and she settled in without any issues. And actually behaved herself for most of the weekend in camp. So that was a pleasant surprise. Go figure. So I was really shocked Saturday morning when I mounted and she proceeded to have a panic attack and run backwards at the starting line while everyone else was going forwards. And just for extra fun, she threw in a few above air antics. So I was really thankful for the security of my Australian stock saddle at the time. I managed to stay topside, so for me that was a win. Turned out the ride start had to go right past our camp and her nickering buddy, and she really decided that she didn't want to go alone. So after everyone had left and was well started down the trail, here comes Chris and her Warhorse Jr. to the rescue. I'd never been so happy to see those two. Once Mariah saw a familiar trail buddy, and Junior came over and walked up to her and whispered some sweet nothings in her nostrils. She just took a deep breath, settled right down, and started moving down the trail without issue. And I gotta tell you, the next 25 miles was absolutely one of my most favorite and memorable rides for so many reasons, despite a less than perfect start. Chris was bringing Junior back from a leg injury, so it had been a couple of years since he'd done a ride, so she wasn't really sure what to expect, and our plan was to turtle. And even though we've been riding together on the trails for several years, this was the first time that we've actually made it together to an endurance ride. So it was kind of special for us. So the first loop, kind of uneventful. We were very conservative, hopeful, nervous. As we neared the mid-vet checkpoint, we both looked at each other and, okay, what happens, happens. The first loop, if nothing else, was a lot of fun, and we got this far, and we were hoping that we would both make it through, but not overly optimistic that both of us would, just based on our history. So, anyways, turns out we worried for nothing. Both the horses vetted out awesome, and turns out that Mariah turned into a fire-breathing dancing dragon at the PR. Totally surprised at her "I refuse to stand still" antics, but I was secretly impressed that she had no trouble meeting post criteria while dancing. Sorry, Josh. I hope you still have all your toes. Clearly, she needed more miles at that point, and I was more than happy to give them to her. So the second loop was even more fun, as we were both able to relax a little. We even managed to work our way up despite our relatively conservative pace. Our plan was to turtle. Our hope was to finish, and the reality was that it was turning out much better than what we had hoped for. So, and I remember there was one stretch of wide open road in the last few miles. Horses were feeling good and wanted to run a little, so we let them open up a little and canter side by each, and that was kind of a very special moment to feel that much horse underneath us at that point in the ride, and we felt pretty confident about how we'd look at the finish. And as we're going along, I realized that so many others rode that exact same trail that day, and every one of them probably experienced it a little bit differently. And that's kind of one thing that I really love about endurance, is we can all go down the same trail, but it's not the same trail for all of us going down it. And on a day that we loved the footing and the terrain and everything else, I know there were those that fell victim and were pulled, and I feel for them. And I know on days when I thought maybe the trail was perfect, it might have been boring or less than perfect for others. But everyone had a different story to tell for the same terrain. And I just want to share, there was kind of one point why this ride was so special for me. There was one point in the second loop as we were nearing the end, and we came out of the woods into a small clearing. And I remember seeing the sun. It was shining like a beacon on this one spot. And I looked down to where it appeared to be pointing, and I saw this beautiful, fluffy gray feather. And it wasn't like the normal turkey or usual beaten down feather that you might see in the woods. And it immediately made me think of an angel. And the color of it was the exact same color of my dearly departed grandmother's hair, who I miss dearly. And at the same time that I saw that feather, I remember a very distinctive wind just came blowing out of nowhere. And it was really weird, because I remember thinking I hadn't felt the wind stir all day long. The wind had been completely calm. And at the same moment that wind stirred, I immediately remembered how I felt when the wind was blowing at my mother's funeral and I scattered her ashes. So at that moment I got goosebumps, because I knew right then, right there, as I held my grandma's cross that I had around my neck and I held it in my hand, I knew that both my mom and my grandma were there that day, and they were watching me finally get to do something again that I loved. My mom always rode a little bay mare with a side of crazy, and my grandma never wanted me to ride alone. So it seemed all of a sudden to make perfect sense to me that day that my little bay mare threw in a little bit of crazy, and that I finally got to ride with my very dear friend. It was a perfect ride, a perfect moment, and it brought tears to my eyes. So at that moment, we knew hugs were in order, right where we were on the trail. So if anybody had come up behind us, we probably would have looked a little ridiculous. Chris leaning down from her 17-2 hand Belgian saddlebred warhorse, and me reaching up on my little bay mare. But it was a perfect moment. Two girls, the horses of their dreams, on the trail together, and a trail that brought tears to our eyes and goosebumps to us. It was pretty awesome. So we finished the trail and we rode into camp, and we just beamed at our final vet checks. Both horses vetted out awesome. My mare still had a little bit of crazy in her, and definitely got me thinking that she may make a 50-mile horse yet. So I'm optimistic maybe by the end of next year we'll be putting some more miles on her. And I remember the sweetest words I heard that day came from Dr. Gam when she said, "Congratulations, you've got your completion." I was so excited. I hugged her. Probably not normal protocol to hug the ride vet, but I just had to, and she happened to be the closest victim. I wanted to give a shout out to Chris and Josh and her whole family for pitching in the crew for me. I felt spoiled, never really having had much help before as far as the ground crew, so the whole weekend was so much fun. It also happened to be my birthday weekend, and I can honestly say that was probably one of my favorite birthday weekends ever. So third time was a charm for me. We finally got our completion. After going 0-2, it can be hard to buckle down and keep giving it a go and not give up. But with Chris's help and support of a lot of friends and family, it finally happened. So I'm optimistic for the future. I'm hoping to squeeze in at least one more LD this season, and with any luck, my daughter Bailey will be trying one together with me. She rode for the very first time for 5.5 hours and survived, and decided that she could actually see herself doing a 25-miler. So now she just has to convince her pony of the same. So with any luck, we'll be seeing some of you out on the trail again this year. Until then, ride happy.
Hello, this is Melissa Coolich reporting in from Wisconsin. We've had a pretty exciting last 2 weeks in endurance riding. I've actually had 2 horses kind of achieve new milestones in their endurance career. I have Jasmine, who did her first 50 2 weeks ago at the Keweenaw ride. That ride is extremely cool. The vetting area and the camping area is in a really nice fairground. So you have electricity generally, you have stall access if you want it, and some very nice trails going out of that facility. So if you have time to trail ride or head up there, or even do the endurance ride next year, I highly recommend it. People in northern Michigan are so nice, and that early fall timing, the weather, there's no more beautiful weather. You get like 0% humidity, warm but crisp, kind of 75 high weather. It's just like the perfect weather for endurance riding. So we went out there, we did our thing. Jasmine, many young horses, they get past that 35-mile mark, get to 40 miles, and they sort of go, "Oh my God, what are we doing? This is really hard." Especially that first time. And usually that barrier is psychological. You have to kind of get them past the point where they believe that they can actually do the distance that you're asking them to do. Not so with Jasmine. Jasmine got stronger as the day went on, and that last loop, she, had more energy than most horses have on their first loop. So I generally like to try to teach a horse to have negative splits, although I don't normally expect it on their very first ride. And this horse, she was so on it that I was able to let her canter the very last loop. So there were 6 starters and 3 finishes. We came in second and vetted out with all A's. Even more goofy is I have a picture of her, and I swear to God, she is smiling at the end of this ride. So I think, this was a horse that took me a long time to train, a long time to settle. I think she's finally realized that this is it. This is all you're asking me to do. I love this sport. Why didn't you do this with me earlier? Well, because she hadn't matured enough to do it. So I think she's eager and ready to go again. It's funny is she's the alpha mare in my Arabian pasture, and I think she wants to be the center of attention every time I go out to the gate. So I have to fend the horses off because they're all wanting to stick their nose in the halter. But I think that's probably a good problem to have. So Jasmine, we let her go. I drove home after the day after, let her go in the pasture, and she went galloping off to brag to her friends what she'd been doing. So all in all, a pretty cool experience for Jasmine, and she did a phenomenal job. So that was her. The other thing that I also did in the last week is completed a first 100 on JG Short Stuff. So Short Stuff is the one that I took to Northern Highlands a few weeks ago. She turned out to be in amazing shape there. Came in first place tied with another horse. So we decided to do the 100 for Colorama. So that ride, we expected to show up and have, probably 8 to 10 100-mile entries, but I can tell you that it was much harder than we were expecting. Typically, Wisconsin this time of year has about a high of about 65, cool, crisp. Usually at this ride, I have to put a butt rug on the first loop and coolers at all the vet holds. Well, this ride, it was about 85, 100% humidity, and because of the rain we had a few weeks ago and all the flooding, the mosquitoes were like nothing I've ever seen. If you've ever seen the movie Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds, I feel like that was what the mosquitoes were like. So that was kind of exciting. We went through a lot of bug spray on this ride. So anyway, we started off with 5 horses in, and for various reasons, folks got pulled throughout the day. And at 75 miles, we were the last horse on the track. So, and even before that, our buddy had been pulled at 31 miles, so we were alone for 70 miles. Well, it's one thing to do an endurance ride when there's lots of horses on the track and you have other horses to keep you motivated, and a whole nother thing to do it when you're the only horse out there. So your horse has no other horse to kind of build confidence with, and of course the horse thinks you're freaking nuts for taking him that far. They're like, wait a second, we've never gone this far. Did Mom lose her mind? So then of course we also, on the same trail, there were 7 tornadoes that went through the couple weeks before, and I have to say the DNR moved heaven and earth to get that trail back open and clear a path for us so that we could continue to do the ride. They had obviously because they had freshly, had to actually bulldoze like all the downed trees and things out of the way, and there hadn't been any rain. Of course, the one concern I had about the trails was that they would be mystery holes and things like that, just because, it takes water to compact trails. So we had to really take our time in those areas. I pretty much walked through all of that because there's no way I'm going to put my horse at risk over that. So we planned on taking it slow. And the other thing that happened was, with the mosquitoes being that bad, once it got dark out, that light was like a mosquito beacon. So, we did a lot of the ride with the light off. In addition, of course, less luck would have it, we had a lot of fog. So, if you had the light on, you were a mosquito beacon, and, your light's going straight into the fog anyway, so you can't see. If you have the light off, the fog is blocking the light from the moon, so you couldn't really see. So we had to really take it slow in the dark, too, because visibility wasn't good. There was really no way to get good visibility, and there were large sections of the trails I had not done previously on this particular trail system. So it's hard to know, since these are the kettle moraines, there's a lot of up and down. Everything is either gradually climbing or gradually decreasing, and you don't really want to fall off the edge of a little hill in the dark. So we took our time, and like I said, we were the only ones to finish. But when we came into the second to last, or to the last hold point, the horse looked so good. I mean, she definitely had A's on everything. So I was so excited and so pleased to see that. And then, and also vetted in beautifully at the end. So, she was, of course, being the only horse to finish, she was also BC. But I strongly believe that regardless, whether there were other horses in the field or not, that she would have been deserving of the BC award. So that was really, really exciting. So I'm so proud of this horse. I will never forget the mosquitoes. I think we went through like 2 full things of fly bug spray and like 4 things of off during the whole experience. So I sure hope that I do not encounter such mosquitoes again. But because it was like the bug spray did nothing. So that was really fun. And I think I have mosquito bites on top of mosquito bites. So, but either way, I'm so proud of my horse, and she did such a great job. So that was awesome. So I did have a couple questions from people about my electrolytes and my electrolyte usage. So I thought I could share them on here as well before I close. So one of the things I've learned from going to the Southeast on some of these FEI rides is we've been pulling electrolyte levels in the blood at the end of rides to kind of get a better handle on, are we electrolyting enough? So one of the things I think that people generally believe is if my horse is drinking, then they have enough electrolytes. I was one of those people who believed that as well. But I also have 2 horses that drink really, really, really well on trail, so it can be deceiving. So the thing about it is even if your horse is drinking, you can still be deficient in electrolytes. Electrolytes aren't just important to get your horse to drink. They're also really important for muscle contraction. So if you're low on electrolytes, your horse can get a cramp, and it can have nothing to do with their physical readiness for the ride. So I think that's something that's really important to know. And if you ever get a chance to go where they have a blood analyzer at a ride, I highly encourage you to pull blood at the end of the ride and learn about where your electrolytes kind of ended up at. So we use a couple of different things to kind of keep the electrolytes in check. I generally give 2 doses of electrolytes at every hold, 2 in the morning before we start and 2 at the end when we're done. I start electrolyting a couple days before with a product called from Kentucky Equine Research called Restore SR. It is a 8-hour control release electrolyte. I like it because, one, it's control release generally also protects products through the stomach, so you don't have to worry about the electrolytes kind of irritating the stomach, which is one of the big concerns about giving a lot of electrolytes. And gets her started to hydrate early. So the more hydrated they are when they go into the ride, the more hydrated they will be at the end. So that helps too, and just sort of gets them a head start on being electrolyted. The other, then I also use try to find a sweat balanced electrolyte. There's a lot of them out there. Enduramax is a popular one, and it works pretty good. But there are others. What you're looking for in a standard electrolyte is one that, when I say sweat balance, it should have sodium, potassium, and magnesium in appropriate quantities. I also give calcium gluconate and CMPK. So CMPK is helpful because that really I think that's really the fastest way to get electrolytes into the horse. So if you want to just get them in quick right before you go, or the horse seems to be a little stiff or something, if you give electrolytes and they come back right away, then you can get an idea of is my horse sore because his electrolytes are imbalanced, or is he sore for some other reason? So it can give you a quicker read on your horse. And then the calcium gluconate product is something that I'm not entirely sure what the mechanism is on it, but I can tell you that I have seen it trigger horses that weren't eating to eat really quickly. So I would hypothesize, and this is total conjecture, that it must either spike the insulin or cause another hormonal response that makes horses want to eat. So that product works great too. But the real reason we give calcium gluconate is also to help with muscle soreness. So your calcium isn't just important for your bones, it's also important for signaling of cells. So in order to, for your cell to say, I'm going to contract, it needs calcium to send that message down the pike. So it's a really good one to help keep your horse from getting sore as well. So, and it's hard. There's not a lot of sources of calcium that are super bioavailable, so that when they take them in, that they actually go to the places, go into the bloodstream and actually do their job right away. So calcium gluconate is another great tool. So generally, before the ride, leading up to the ride, I'm giving syringes of, water and Restore SR. Starting the morning of, before I leave, I use 60 cc syringes. I give one, what I usually do is I put my electrolytes in first, then I put in calcium gluconate, fill the syringe to the top, shake it up, give it to her. Then I do the second electrolyte, which is the quicker release electrolyte. Fill that one with CMPK and electrolyte, and give that as well. So I think both those products work good. So I have, based on the blood testing that I've done on electrolyte levels, I used to give one syringe of electrolytes, and now I give two. So I'm thinking that my electrolyte levels should be much more on, but we'll find out in November when we go to our next ride in the Southeast. So our next planned ride is going to be Broxton for JG Short Stuff, and hopefully we can try for our COC time there. And then also I have to do one more 50 for Jasmine this year. We'll probably do that in a couple of weeks at Draw-A-Rama, which is another ride in Wisconsin. So I guess the AERC Wisconsin season is sort of winding down. The FEI season is sort of winding up. So we'll be continuing on our endurance journey throughout the year. So I hope you enjoyed listening, and hope to hear from you if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, this is Victoria from Marvel Endurance in Queensland, Australia. So it's been about 4 months since my last submission, when I talked a bit about our team's adventures at the Queensland State Championships, where we had all 4 of our riders entered into the 80-kilometre ride, and we all came out with a completion, which we were very excited about. Since then, we've gone to 4 more rides, so I'll start at the first one and work my way down toward now. About a month after state champs, we went on our annual trip to the Marumba ride, which is about 4 hours away. It's one of our favourites and we never miss it. It's a truly fabulous ride. One of the things that makes it a little interesting is the beautiful, big, loud steel footbridge that we all have to cross right at the start of the ride. And there's no way around it, so we have to cross it on the way back too. Thankfully, our horses are all pretty good with it. I think in part because they wear polyurethane shoes and they don't make as much steel and aren't as slippery as steel shoes. So our lineup for the ride was 4 horses in the 83-kilometre ride. I rode my Palomino gelding Mizzy. Jasmine was on my crazy little bay mare Coda, and Adriana was taking her old faithful Syrah, and we had a young rider named Molly lined up to ride Vegas. It was an eventful trip, starting out with a rather horrific float accident. We'd barely made it 5 minutes down the road before Syrah, who hadn't been to a ride or on a float in over a year, fell down in the float. I was in the car behind, so Adriana and I saw it all happen, and we managed to contact Kat, who was towing the float in front of us, and she stopped on the side of the highway. The way it all happened is a bit of a long story, but I'll summarise it by saying that Syrah exited the float on his own terms, out of the personal access door in the front that is designed for people. He was miraculously only a little scratched up. I decided to shuffle the horses around and put him on the float that my husband and I were towing so we could watch him. The windows on the front of it are a bit wider so we could see him better while we were driving. Adriana was a bit of a mess, to say the least, understandably, of course, because it was a very traumatic thing, for us at least. Syrah was fine. He walked straight onto the other float and did not even bother, was not fussed at all. In fact, he spent most of the ride, I think, eating the hay bale that he was not supposed to be able to reach.
I insisted that he was coming to the ride anyway, because I figured if he was going to have a problem, I'd rather him be with me and in the vicinity of a vet at a ride than at home in the paddock while we're all away for the weekend. We ended up getting to the ride at a reasonable time without any further incidents. All the horses looked great, and we got set up and met up with Molly and Jasmine. They'd come from Toowoomba, which was from another direction. Molly took Vegas for a ride, and afterward we discovered that she wasn't quite right, just a little bit off somewhere in the hind, so it would be best not to start her in the ride. So that left us with 3 in the 83-kilometre ride. Jazz was going to ride with me. I planned to do it reasonably quick, and it being Jasmine's first ride as an open rider, I was pretty keen to let her stretch Coda's legs. Adriana was going to be taking it easy and found a couple of friends to ride along with. Mizzy is not a fast horse, so it wasn't the quickest I've done the Marumba track, but we ended up placing 3rd lightweight, and Jasmine, along with us on Coda, came in as the first junior across the line, and we later had her awarded best conditioned, so that was really good. We were there to photograph Adriana and Sarah as they crossed the finish line 2 hours behind us to complete Sarah's first ride in more than a year. So all in all, it was a pretty great ride. Our next outing was to Biggenden, which is actually the ride club that we're a part of. The Marvel team sponsored all of the Best Conditioned Awards, which were a lovely boxed crystal trophy with a silver horse head figure. It was my 14-year-old sister's 3rd 80-kilometre ride, and she was on Mizzy. Adriana was riding our chestnut gelding Jarzy for his 3rd 80, and I was riding Coda, just because my mother wouldn't let my sister out by herself, and I'm a glutton for punishment. I was actually really sick the whole week before the ride, so I was not going into it 100%, and riding Coda with a thick head is never ideal. We all ended up vetting through that evening, so it was a great result, though Coda and I parted company twice on the second loop. I didn't hit my head either time, but the swing of being thrown sideways made my head feel like it had been shook like a snow globe, and that was less than fun. We had a pre-ride disaster strike when our teammate Beth's horse got a fright and bolted from her yard. But thankfully no one was injured, and Merlin was caught and returned peacefully. Beth went on to ride in her first 40-kilometre with Kat and Vegas that afternoon, and we had a 5 out of 5 for Biggenden. 2 weeks later, Adriana, Jasmine and I took a trip away for the weekend, 2 dogs and 2 horses in tow. We attended the Sparkler ride. Adriana has never done it before, and it was the last opportunity for Jazz to do a ride before she headed back to boarding school. So they were entered in the 80-kilometre on Mizzy and Coda, and it was a 3-loop ride, so they were going to be a bit late coming back in. They eventually finished a little bit before 1 a.m, and I almost got caught napping because I was quite literally napping in the car and wasn't expecting them to arrive for a little while longer. I just happened to look out the window and saw a couple of headlights coming and got out to check, and it was them. It was really quite chilly, so we only took the horses' heart rates and they were low enough, so we took them straight into the vet ring. Adriana and Mizzy vetted through nicely for a completion, and Jasmine and Coda finished as 3rd juniors, so we were very happy with that end result. Last but not least is our final ride for the 2018 season. It was actually just this weekend gone, the 10th of November, so it was expectedly warm, of course. It was actually 2 days before the 7th anniversary of my very first ride, which incidentally was at the same place. I wanted a nice ride, so I decided to take Mizzy instead of Coda, and along with me I had my awesome friend Brittany. She actually owns Jarzy, the horse I've been training this year that Adriana has ridden, so I was bringing him along for Brit to do her first 40k. It all went along swimmingly. It was hot, but thankfully we had the amazing Sue Sutcliffe to strap our horses with us. Sue has been such a fantastic mentor to me through the years, and we have shared some very special moments at rides, and it was no exception this weekend because she was just as happy as we were when the horses both fitted through. So in total this year, our team has had 7 riders, 9 horses, 32 entries in 15 events at 11 different rides and only 4 vet outs through the entire year. Our horses and riders have collectively ridden 1,775 kilometres in 2018. 3 of our riders started this season as novice, and all 3 are now open riders. We got Sarah off the 13-month rule, Jarzy is now open, Mizzy and Coda have both had 100% years, and in just 3 months' time, it will be full steam ahead for the 2019 season and preparing for the Tom Quilty Gold Cup 2019.
This is Courtney Krueger with some stories I recorded at Big South Fork at the Endurance Ride and the Ride and Tie races.
My name is Kelly Stoneburner, and I just did a ride and tie at Iron Mountain about 2 weeks ago for the first time with my partner Annie. We had a really good time, and then my brother was able to come join me today.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Stoneburner. I've been riding for just about all my life, but this is my first ride and tie. Fortunate that I've got my sister Kelly Stoneburner, and she's facilitated this whole thing, and it's good to finally be able to get out and actually get doing one of these things.
Yeah, at home we ride and run a lot, so this was just fun to be able to actually do it at an event, and Paul's schedule usually never works out because he's in the military, so it was really nice that it worked out, and Monday night I think it all came together. He was like, actually I can come, so we decided to come and did the 30-miler today, and we had to take it a little bit easy on the horse because she did a 50-mile ride yesterday with my daughter, so we took it easy on her. It was her first ride and tie, and she figured it out. We had a lot of fun, and the trails were awesome. Those huge rocks that we had to come, ride by coming out of the gorge were really awesome. I think that was the best part.
Yeah, definitely a beautiful place and definitely more to follow.
And everyone is so nice.
I'm Amy Kerrigan, and I've started doing ride and tie 1 year ago.
I'm Ava Allington. I'm 13 years old, and I've done 2 ride and tie races.
Okay, so today's race, so Ava's my daughter, and she had a goal that she wanted to complete in the next 10 years, a 30-mile ride and tie. So that's what we thought we were going to do, and we ended up with 1 horse and 4 people, which doesn't work in ride and tie. So what we ended up doing was splitting a 30-miler into 2 15s. So Ava and I went out on a new horse for Ava to complete our 15-mile at Big South Fork, which we did.
And for me, it was really scary because I was on a completely new horse, and before I did ride and tie, I was like always in an arena, riding the same horses pretty much every week. It was really boring, so going out here and on my second race, only a little bit longer, but a new horse was really nerve-wracking, and we had to cross water, and there was sand, and my legs didn't feel like running, so I walked a lot, but it was really fun.
So I think unusual occurrence for today was towards the start. We were on a straightaway, and down the trail a ways was a black bear. And I got a little nervous. I was on foot. Ava was behind me on the horse, and another horse rider was like, "It's okay. He'll get out of the way." And I guess he did. He was a baby, and that babies are cute, but Mama usually isn't far behind. So what he did, kind of waddle back off into the woods. I think Ava can maybe say more about that. She got a little closer to him.
Yeah, and so when we rode up to him, I was worried that the bear was just going to call for its mom. It didn't. It just ran away, and it was running down the trail for quite some time, and then just turns off into the woods. And I like little baby bears. I love bears in general, though, because they waddle when they run, so it's really cute.
Let's see, another first for the day. I have a bee allergy, so I got stung by yellow jackets about an hour, 45 minutes into the race, and wasn't sure how my body was going to react, so quick took a Benadryl and fought down some anxiety over whether or not I was going to die. And then another teammate, not my teammate, but another teammate, kind of, reminded me to think about whether or not my tongue was swelling, but nothing happened. The Benadryl must have worked, other than just making me tired getting through the rest of the race. And I'll let Ava tell you about our huge river crossing, which was great, which helped the bee sting too.
So we came up to a river. I was on a horse, and I saw another teammate or not my teammate, but someone else on a horse, and they were like, should we wait for our teammates? What do we do? And I'm like, I'm not sure. And so both of our teammates ended up coming up behind us, and so we tried to go, and Coda doesn't like the water, apparently. So we were in the water, and Coda was just trying to get across, and it was kind of sidestepping and getting crazy, and I was like, Ava, wait, we're going to take a picture. And I'm like, but Coda won't stand still. And so I kept spinning Coda and whatever, would not stand still. But eventually we got across, and Coda was just started trotting really fast up the concrete hill thingy at the end. Really excited to get out of the water. It was really funny.
This is Courtney Krueger. I'm going to interrupt right here for a second because I also rode Coda back from the way we split that 30-mile race. Carrie Barris and I rode Coda back, and we had a very similar experience. I hadn't heard your experience until just now. When we got to the river, we decided that we also wanted to take pictures, and Coda just wanted nothing to do with it. We thought he was just anxious to get across the river because he's such a competitor, and he was like, we don't have time for a photo op. This is a race. Come on, guys. But that's so funny to hear y'all say that too, because that was exactly our experience. And we actually switched in the middle of the river, so took pictures of Carrie on Coda, and then I got on Coda, and Coda was just fit to be tied, or actually untied. He just wanted to go, and he was not happy about this photo op right in the middle of a race. He's much more a competitor apparently than we are. Anything you got to say?
No, I would just get Coda is, so I rode Coda once a year ago, and haven't gotten on him again till now, and he is so funny. He's super competitive with just a total race brain. And the thing that made today a little more challenging too was with endurance riders out on the trail who weren't getting on and off. If we were trying to make a switch while we were by endurance riders, Coda was a little upset that he was being left behind. So added another little element of needing to spin and get him to actually, in some cases, go back the wrong way up the trail to calm him down, just because he wants to lead, he wants to win.
And Coda is my horse. He's about a 15'2" Arabian. So he's fairly tall for an Arabian and very tall for a riding tie horse, but that does give him this huge trot that's just so much fun to ride, and he's so fast on that trot. And as Amy just said, he is so competitive, and he does not want a horse to be ahead of him. And sometimes that causes a few problems. I want to tell another couple of riding tie stories and actually one is an endurance story from Big South Fork, as long as we're here at Big South Fork. Our other horse that we've used for riding tie over the years is named Cruz, and he was the first horse that I ever did riding tie on, and also the first horse that both Amy and Ava did riding tie on. He started lots of people in their riding tie career. And my second race ever on Cruz was with my daughter here at Big South Fork. And we were going to do a 15-mile race. And we got maybe 2 miles in. And I had tied him. Sarah had tied him. My daughter had tied him. And I was ahead of her on foot. And I was behind her. That's what it was. I was behind Sarah. She tied Cruz, and I never found Cruz, and I'm still running, and another riding tie team passed me, and they went around a big corner, and I heard them say, Sarah, your dad's on foot right behind you. Something is wrong. And I'd almost caught Sarah on foot, and it meant I had passed Cruz. But what had happened is somehow Cruz had come untied. Both Sarah and I were rookies, and we just didn't know how to tie well, I guess, at that point. And so Sarah said, and she was 15 at the time. So she said, Dad, I know where I tied him. I'll run back and see if he's still there. Maybe you just ran past him. You keep going, because that'll keep us in this race. It was just amazing that my 15-year-old and I are actually trying to stay competitive when there's a missing horse. So she goes backwards to go see where he is. I keep going forwards. And as I'm running into the camp at the end, everybody's cheering because we're rookies. This is our second race. And they see me me running there cheering. I'm like, no, don't cheer for me. I don't know where our horse is. And then I realized I don't even know where my daughter is. And so all's well that ends well. Cruz was actually missing for about 6 hours, but an endurance rider found him, realized a horse fully tacked up with a big number painted on his butt had to belong here at the Big South Fork camp. And so they ponied him in, and all's well that's end well for that day. Well, then Sarah and I were going to do an endurance ride the next day. Now, this was early in my horse riding career, and I bet I had maybe 12 miles total seat time on a horse at that point. And Sarah was going to be my coach, and she was going to ride her newer horse, and I was going to ride Cruz the next day in the 30-mile limited distance. Next morning, morning dawns, and Sarah wakes up, and she is just sick to her stomach, and there's no way she's going to be able to ride. And so Sarah and Lee, my wife, say, it's no problem. You just ride Cruz. You know what you're doing. You just go ahead and ride Cruz. You'll be fine. And so in retrospect, Lee says, I can't believe that I tossed you up on a horse and sent you out on a 30-mile limited distance ride when you just had I did not know how to tie a saddle. Had that saddle come unloose, I couldn't have tightened it back up. I knew nothing. It was just basically sit on the horse and pray. And the first 15 miles, though, I kind of was with another couple of folks, and I told them I was a total rookie, and they said, well, just ride with us. And so that was fine. I did get stung by a yellow jacket that day, too. And the only other time I've ever been stung by a yellow jacket was at Big South Fork. So there's just something about the yellow jackets in Big South Fork. And I guess this time of year, it's September. But I got to the 15-mile point. Things were just going great. Everything was super. It was raining cats and dogs. We go through the hold. Everything is fine. Cruz and I set back out. And the big difference now is we're by ourselves. We're not with somebody else. And so we're making it down the trail, and we're doing okay for maybe the first half mile. And then two 50-mile endurance riders come by, and they are in contention. And so they are moving fast. And Cruz wants to be with them. And I don't want to go as fast as they're going in the rain on all this slick clay that Big South Fork has. And I fought that horse, and the only way I knew how to fight him was to pull back on the reins. I knew nothing more than that, and it's a wonder I didn't just rip his mouth out. But I fought him for 8 solid miles until we got to the river. And I said to myself, if I can just get to the river, I'm getting off the horse. And I don't know what we're going to do at the river, but I'm going to make a decision. And maybe I'm just going to quit, even though I don't know what I would have done. You're still 8 miles from the camp at that point. But I got off of him, and we got in the river, and he drank, and I kind of calmed down, and he kind of calmed down. And the next 8 miles were just wonderful. And I learned a huge lesson, which is if you're calm, you've got a lot better chance of your horse being calm. And so my first LD was as a just total rookie, and thanks to Cruz being the pro that he's always been, he got me through. So that's another Big South Fork, both ride and tie and endurance story.
Hi, my name's Leroy Oleson, and I've written a book that I'd like to tell you about. The title of the book is Endurance Years Gone By. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been involved in the sport of endurance since the late 70s as a junior. Over the course of those years, I've accumulated just under 13,000 miles, including over 2,100-mile rides. During those years, there's been a lot of changes in techniques, philosophies, and especially riders. Years ago, when I was at the Bear Valley Springs ride in the Pacific South region, I was talking with someone about Rio. This person had never heard of Rio, and I was shocked. How could anyone in endurance not know about the great Aro Grand Sultan? But I thought to myself, how could they know? Rio hadn't been on the trail for a few years, and all the magazines with him on the cover or articles written about him had most likely been thrown away or piled in a closet somewhere. I had an idea about writing a book about Rio and other horses and people in the early years of the sport. I made a few lists, and I tucked them away for several years. You know, I'm not an author, I'm a writer. And what makes me think I can write a book? Time went by, and I never forgot the idea of a book. So in the summer of 2014, I was at the fireworks ride in the West region, and I talked to Julie Sir about my idea. Julie had already written a couple of her own books, and she would know everyone on my list. Of course, she was encouraging and thought it was a great idea. No one had ever written a book on great horses and riders from years ago. With her encouragement, I started, not knowing what I was doing. The research was fun, poring over old magazines including Endurance News, AERC yearbooks, Saddle Action, Trails Digest, and Trailblazers. Next, I actually had to interview people about themselves, family members, and the horses. I'm quite an introverted person, so this was definitely out of my comfort zone. I started with people I knew and started out telling them I would be learning how to do this with them as my guinea pigs. These people included Julie Sir, Becky Hart, and Trilby Peterson. They were great, and it helped me develop my confidence for all the others I needed to contact. Fast forward 1.5 years, I had a book that was ready to go to print. The book was titled Endurance Years Gone By. Dick Carter, a friend of mine, created a beautiful original cover, and Susan Garlinghouse wrote the foreword. I asked Susan to write the foreword because she was chair of the AERC Education Committee, and I was going to donate a percentage of the proceeds back to the Education Committee. Now I had a book, and they needed to be sold to help recover my costs and have something to give back to AERC. Again, selling is way out of my comfort zone. Slowly, people started buying them. I was especially encouraged when people would buy one and come back to me and buy more to give to friends as Christmas gifts. I'd like to read a couple little sections from you out of the book. To set the scene, this is a few paragraphs in Trilby Peterson's chapter. Trilby ultimately was the first person to reach the 50,000 mile mark back in 2000. So I'm just going to start here on page 155. A rivalry had developed between Trilby and another accomplished endurance rider, Les Carr. A bet was made and the race was on. The 1986 Race for Miles. Who could ride the most miles in one season? It was a crazy year, one that will never be forgotten as the greatest battle for miles ever. Trilby's statistics were astounding in the world of endurance. She completed 110 sanctioned rides for 7,040 miles in 16 states on over 30 different horses. Most were leased or borrowed because she owned only 4 at the time. The leased and borrowed horses were kept in strategic locations all over the country to minimize travel time. Trilby traveled by every way possible to arrive at rides in time for the start, including privately chartered jets, while the crew would bring the horses. Her travel schedule was crazy. She would finish one ride, sometimes a 100-miler. Upon finishing, her driver would take her through the night to the next ride to a 50 on another horse the following day. The week of TEVIS, she started with a 60-mile ride in Oregon, then went on to ride 6 days on the Lost Wagon Train ride, which was in the Northwest region, and that was 310 miles. The week was topped off by riding TEVIS for a total of 475 miles in 8 days. Even our hardcore XP riders do not put up these kind of miles in 8 days. There were plenty of stories that came with the hectic year. On one trip, Trilby lost her bag of dirty, stinky clothes on a flight home. She was tired and left the bag in the overhead compartment. When she realized it was left behind, she contacted the airline, but it was never found. Someone may have thought they found a treasure until they took it home and opened the bag. In the end, I'll just give you the synopsis. Les Carr actually won that race for miles by a very, very small margin. Now I'd like to read just a small part of the chapter on Rio, who I mentioned earlier. This was at the 1992 World Championship. It was in Barcelona, Spain, Becky and Rio were back on the trail representing the USA as a 2-time world champion. Coming near the end of the ride, a French rider was released from a vet check 6 minutes early. Rio was up for the challenge and took off after her. He did catch up, but then lost a hind shoe. Beck came to a stop, put on an easy boot. The French team came into the last vet checks 3 minutes before Becky and Rio, but Rio still recovered first. Unfortunately, Rio needed both hind shoes replaced. They left the last vet check at a full gallop. Rio knew there was one horse to catch. On a 6-mile uphill, Rio pushed himself and did catch and pass the French horse. This 100-mile ride finished in a polo field with trees in the backside and very little lighting. No one saw the little dark American horse enter the galloping track around the field. Becky was halfway around the track when she heard the cheers from the crowds because the French rider had entered the stadium. It was not until the final stretch did the crowd and Rio's crews see them in first place. Everyone erupted in excitement. Becky and Rio won the individual gold medal at the World Championship for a 3rd time. So, as you can see, Rio was quite spectacular. Several people encouraged me to write another book because they enjoyed the first one so much. It was a fun project and I loved sharing all the information and stories I wrote about. There are so many interesting people, athletic horses, and changes in the sport. Now there was a way for new riders to learn about these accomplished people and horses from the early days, and they could learn about the trial and error or trial and success. It was easier to get started on a new book because I learned so much from the first. The new book will hopefully be in print by October or November. The title of the book, the new book, will be Enduring Memories. Dick Carter is creating another original cover, and Julie Sir is writing the foreword. Again, I'll give the percentage of the proceeds back to AERC Education Committee. If anyone's interested in a book, I can be contacted at endurancehistory@gmail.com. I hope that everyone will take an interest in these amazing horses and fascinating people that help to create the sport we all know and love into what it is today. Thanks a lot.
A couple of words of explanation before our next story. Lori Little is the one that I credit with teaching me how to make up songs as you're on the trail. You're kind of bored on the trail or it's really tough on the trail and you make up songs and change the lyrics to songs. And so I asked her if she would sing the first song that she ever made up on the trail for Ride and Tie. And she sings it about her horse She-Ra. And this was kind of tough for her because after a wonderful career and just a wonderful life that Lori was able to give to She-Ra and that She-Ra was able to offer back to Lori, Lori had to put She-Ra down recently, and so it actually took her a couple of takes to do this, but it's a wonderful testimony not only to the fun that we have in Ride and Tie and the ways that we can enjoy Ride and Tie, but also how much we love our horses and how much meaning they give to us, and it is a testimony to a great horse and a great owner. So here is Lori Little.
Hi, this is Lori Little. I've been doing Ride and Tie for about 6 years now, I guess, and one day my partner kind of left me. I took a wrong turn and she rode past me, and then I got back on the trail, so I was running and she went on to camp without me. And so to while away the hours of running, I made up this song. Where, oh, where's my horse tied up? Why did they leave me here all alone? I searched the trails over and thought I saw She-Ra, but I turned the corner and no horse in sight.
Yay!
I'm Joanne Mitchell. I have been the Big South Fork Ride and Tie manager since 1999, and we have completed obviously 20 Ride and Ties of various sizes of groups. The story I remember right now is I guess one of Courtney Krueger and his 15-year-old daughter Sarah's first Ride and Tie was when they were doing Jack Ridge loops, and when Sarah tied the horse got away, got into bees or something. But anyway, Courtney, the father, is obviously very concerned that his horse and daughter are out in the woods, lost, and may or may not know their way back to camp. And we jump in the truck, try to find the horse on what vehicle access roads we can. We can't find the horse. The good part is the horse was, led back into camp by another endurance rider, but it was 6 hours later and much anxiety later. So riding tie is a very interesting sport. We've got ultra runners. We've got people that don't run at all and they just walk the course. We've got junior riders that stay with their parent or grandparent, and they just have a wonderful time in a family atmosphere.
This is Courtney Krueger again. I want to talk about a couple of the places at Big South Fork that everybody knows about and either looks forward to or dreads. And of course, in the endurance and riding tie world, there are lots of different places that are kind of iconic places. Cougar Rock, of course, at TEVIS being the most iconic of all. Everybody knows Cougar Rock and knows what that's all about. Well, at Big South Fork, most people, I think, really look forward to the opportunity to crossing the Big South Fork River. It's just kind of a fun river crossing, relatively shallow, but a fairly wide river, and it's just a nice kind of way to break up the trip. When you get to the river, you're about 2/3 maybe of the way to the vet check, and then when you're coming back from the away vet check and get back to the river, you know that you just have a few miles left, 6.5, 7, maybe 8 miles left to go before you get back to the finish. And so it's just a nice way to mark it. And when you're on foot, it's nice because you can actually swim the river, even though it's rarely more than maybe 3 feet deep. But I almost always, when I'm coming across it, if I'm on foot, I dive in because it's so hot and it's a great way to cool off. The other formation or other geographical feature that people kind of dread at Big South Fork is Duncan Hollow Hill. And this is about, I guess, a 3/4 of a mile hill that is just a relentless uphill that comes fairly late in the race. If you're doing the 30-mile race, it is about mile 25 or so you start coming up that hill. If you're doing the 50-mile race, it's at about mile 45 that you're coming up that hill. And so it's late in the race, you're tired, the horse is tired, and then you have this just relentless uphill for a while, and it's just so painful to go up. This year, as we crossed a big creek, there's a real deep creek crossing, which again, when I'm on foot, I love to go ahead and immerse myself in the creek and get cooled off because I knew as soon as I come out of that creek, we're headed up Duncan Hollow. And so this year, we started heading up, and it was our horse Coda's first time to go across the river. Last year, we had to do both of the day races on the other side of the river because the river was too high. So it's the first time he's been on the other side of the river, first time he's been on Duncan Hollow, and we start heading up Duncan Hollow, and I say to Coda, you are now doing the second hardest hill in the East Coast in riding tie, the first hardest being the gas line at Old Dominion at Orkney Springs, which he had to do a couple of times already this year. And so here we go up the Duncan Hollow Hill, and Carrie Barris and I, my partner, were the only team in that particular race, so we really weren't racing. We were just out having a great day of riding tie. But Coda doesn't see it that way. Coda is super competitive, he's super forward, and he really wants to just kind of charge up that hill. And so to kind of try to settle him down a little bit, I said to him, Coda, you don't have to go so fast. Liara Gonzalez is hundreds of miles away from here. And the reason I said that is the second story I want to tell of 3 about the hill, the first being the one I just told you. Liara Gonzalez was in the last riding tie that we did, and she talked about being pregnant and racing so hard and getting sick along the trail, not knowing that she was pregnant, but still coming in ahead of the team that she was trying to beat. She is just a relentless, fierce competitor, and if she is trying to win a race, she's probably going to win a race. And 2 years ago, my brother-in-law Mark Landers and I were in the 30-mile riding tie along with Liara and her partner Barb Matthews. And Barb is also just an incredible riding tie competitor. And so Mark and I get to Duncan Hollow Hill, and we are ahead of them by just a little bit. We're not sure how far ahead of them we are, but we know we're ahead of them. And I said to Mark, in spite of the fact that this hill is so tough, there's enough switchbacks, we need to get far enough up it so that they don't see us. Because if Liara sees us, she will beat us. She's almost like one of these mythical creatures where if you look at it, you you die, it's kind of the reverse. If Liara sees you ahead of you, you're going to die. She's going to come and beat you. And so we are really trying so hard to get up that hill as fast as we can, because once you get to the top, it's a relatively flat and straight, about 4 miles or so to the finish. And I thought she might be able to see us in one of those straightaways, but not if we made enough good time coming up the hill. Another little ride and tie bit of strategy is when people are behind you, if they don't know how far behind you they are, they tend to go a little bit slower. But if they know they're fairly close, that gives them, of course, the encouragement to try to catch you. And so we are really working up Duncan Hollow Hill, working it as hard as we can. And it is such a tough hill. And I'm on foot, and I have just crested out. And at the very top of Duncan Hollow Hill, you come out onto a dirt road, and it's nice and flat. And I've just crested out. I'm feeling pretty good because we're ahead of them, and they didn't see us coming up the hill. And here comes Liara on the horse, and she crests out. And there is a hitching post right there at the top of that hill. She jumps off the horse, ties the horse to the hitching post, and takes off. And Mark and I think, flip-flop back and forth with them a couple of times, but within a mile or so, they had already gotten out ahead of us, and they beat us in that race. Now, my third story about Duncan Hollow Hill takes place 2 years before that, back at the 2014 East Coast Ride and Tie Championship. First time there had been any kind of a Ride and Tie Championship on the East. This was the first ever East Coast Championship. My daughter Sarah Krueger and I were in the race together. We were partners, and we get to Duncan Hollow Hill, and as we cross that big creek and are headed towards the hill, there right ahead of us are Jarvis Pickens and Perry Summers. And they both were really better runners probably than we were, and they probably should have beaten us. However, they both were chafing pretty badly. And anybody that rides horses for long knows that that happens from time to time when you're horsing. And both of their legs were really, really chafing pretty badly. And it was painful for them to be in the saddle and also painful for them to be on the ground. And I think going up that hill just was excruciating. And so Sarah and I actually got out just a little bit ahead of them. I mean, less than 1/10 of a mile, but we got a little bit ahead of them as we made our way up the hill. And we're making our way up the hill, and the ride and tie community is small enough that I'm now counting in my head how many teams are in front of us. And I can only count 9 teams in front of us. And so I said to Sarah, if we, once we get to the top of this hill, if we really push and stay ahead of Jarvis and Perry, I think we're going to top 10. And wouldn't that be cool to top 10 the first ever championship on the East Coast? And so that's our new goal. So we get to the top, and we get to that long dirt road. It's about, I guess, 4 miles or so into camp, and we are just pushing as hard as we can. And at the time, I really was the better runner, and Sarah was the better rider. And so without telling her that I was worried that she might not be able to run as fast as we needed the team to run, I just started tying short. So we were planning to do about half a mile ties. And so I started tying at maybe 1/4 of a mile or maybe 3/10 of a mile. And she quickly realized that I was tying short, and she realized why I was tying short. Sarah is no fool. And so when she caught me on the horse at one point, she said, "Dad, I can run. I'm fine. We need to stick with our plan. We were tying at half-mile ties. Let's do half-mile ties." So appropriately chastised, I began working the plan again, tying half-mile ties. We come into the finish line. Of course, everybody is cheering as we come across the finish line. I look over at my wife, and I hold up my 2 hands and say, "Are we 10th?" And she said, "No, you're 11th." And so all of that work, and we didn't top 10, but still it was a great day. And I never, ever go up Duncan Hollow without thinking about all these stories. And I hope that I'll have many, many stories in years to come about Duncan Hollow and also about crossing the Big South Fork River.
Daryl from New Zealand here again with a post-TEVIS update. So TEVIS is now in the past. Jenny and I are still in California, but we fly out tonight back to a New Zealand winter. We're heading home without the buckle, but with a great experience behind us for both of us and a lot of new friends. For me, as a crewing experience, it's been awesome. My first time here, I felt unprepared and like a complete novice. This time, I've been able to meet the horse first, find out from the owners what they expected of me, and actually plan what I needed, where and how I was going to get there. As luck would have it, my best friend Cindy, who lives in California, decided that she was going to be wherever I was, and she has a Silverado. We made good use of that. Cindy knows nothing about endurance, but she allocated herself to looking after the rider all day, making sure that everything Jenny needed was exactly where she needed it: eating, drinking, chair and shade. Turns out Cindy's family have connections with the TEVIS historically, so her family were also following our rider online, and it's highly possible we've now created a few more TEVIS addicts. So we had everything organised as to what we needed at each crew point, everything organised, time to just get out there and do it. We all went up to Roby Park for the briefings and the shopping, of course, and to see everyone vetted through. In the crew briefing, they stressed really heavily to us that we needed to remove all hay, poo and leftover feed from Robinson Flat. 3 times they said, put your tarp down. So before we went to Robinson Flat the next morning, I made sure we had one. We got extra ice as well, just in case, and smart water for Jenny. At the new rider briefing, just after, there was a major distraction as a bear wandered through the meadow and around the edge of the camp. Apparently he spent the night investigating campsites. I didn't hear of any adverse effects for horses though, so that's good. TEVIS morning was an early start to get up to Robinson Flat and get set up. It's a surprisingly long drive to get up there, but it's a paved road all the way, so pretty easy. When you drive into Robinson Flat for crewing, you have 3 minutes to offload your stuff and get the vehicle out of there. By the time we got there, the flat ground was all taken, but Tamara found us a good spot quite a way back, but pretty close to the outtimers. Good spot. We put the tarp down, put the hay on it and the food for the horse next to it, set up chairs and then went down to wait for the riders. From Robinson Flat, you can walk up the track a little to see the riders coming in. So we went up and stood with everyone else along the track, doing the endurance dance with our phones to try and get service. There wasn't any. The leaders came in and we were counting off riders. I can't remember what rank Jenny was coming in. Far enough back to be not racing, which was always the plan. Saddle off, water on. It was pretty hot and the heart rate was fluctuating a bit, so we waited longer than we maybe needed to before going in, at which point the heart rate dropped like a stone. This is an experienced horse who really knows the game. Nice trot up and we were cleared for the next phase. Philoette ate well and drank. Jenny sat, washed the dirt off her face and ate well and drank. By this time we had the news that our other rider had pulled at Red Star Ridge, so only one horse to worry about now. The hold time for TEVIS is an hour. Cindy's job was to make sure we didn't forget the out time, and remind me so that we got saddled up in time. I could have taken an extra 5 minutes actually, because we were saddled up well ahead of time and Jenny was back up at the outtimers with time to spare. So, rider now back on track, we as crew had to pack everything back out down the road to the truck, clean up our camp and get down to Forest Hill. The tarp was a godsend at this point. We just lifted up the corners and folded all the hay seeds up with it. Packing up was a breeze. Cindy had also brought a collapsible wagon trolley for us to use, which made a huge difference. Cindy and I arrived down at Forest Hill and weren't sure where the rest of our crew was with the trailer, so we cruised around a little and found a spot right near the P&R box that had shade, was close to toilets and didn't seem to be out of bounds. So we offloaded there and Cindy went off to park the vehicle. I figured we could move if we needed. Our other rider, Potato, was over in the treatment area to get cleared to take the horse home, since they live so local. I got him a bottle of water as well, and then we saw Doris White also sitting there. Doris will tell you her own story, but she had pulled because she wasn't feeling good. Cindy and I got her some water as well and gave her some watermelon and got some hay for her horse, who was just fine, by the way. Potato's horse, Fifi, was cleared to leave. There were a number of other horses in there who weren't. Potato checked the hold area that I'd set up and approved it, and then they headed off to take the horse home, leaving us to wait for Jenny. I started getting messages from home that Jenny's tracker wasn't working. It showed her as still not having reached Robinson Flat, and that was 3 hours ago. Cindy's daughter, who'd never heard of endurance before, was messaging saying, "She hasn't moved for 3 hours, is that normal?" So I headed over to the computer people to find out what to find out about it and to find out what we could do about it, and they swung into motion and to find another tracker for her to switch when she came into Forest Hill. They were all so very patient and helpful. It seemed to be taking an awfully long time. My phone was flat and I couldn't check the TEVIS page for progress. I kept going up and asking the computer people. I'd walk up and ask, "Rider 31?" and they'd say, "Showing out of Deadwood at 3:43. They kept telling me that about every 2 minutes for what seemed like an hour. I swear I asked them every 2 minutes. They must have been so sick of me. Finally, they said she'd left Michigan half an hour ago. It had finally updated. Yay! So we headed down Bath Road to wait for her with buckets and wagon. I love this bit at Forest Hill. The locals have viewing areas on their lawns with chairs all set up. There are hoses set up to cool the horses off, and it's a real atmosphere. Finally, we saw her coming up the road. Cindy was taking pictures. My friend Gabrielle had joined us by this point and was invaluable. Saddle off, water on, walking up the hill to the crew area, and the heart rate was down quickly, and they were in the vet ring and trotting out. Horse even better than last time. We brought her over to the shade and gave her food and water, same for Jenny, plus massage since we now had Gab. Philouette was just about going to sleep by the time it was time to saddle up again. Tracker changed over to a functioning one, headlamp in place. They were out on the next leg. So we got packed up again and headed home for a shower and some food, and to put updates online for everyone back home. So then it was back into Auburn to the fairgrounds to wait for the finish. We unloaded, didn't need much this time, and then Tamara made me go lie down for a while. I put the horse blanket down and had a sleep for half an hour in the bleachers. Online we saw that Jenny was through the river crossing, so close to home you could almost reach out and grab them. So I headed up to the overlook, the time finished with our New Zealand flag to walk them in, and then Gab texted me one word, lame. We were gutted. Jenny can fill you in on the details, but Philouette had stumbled slightly and was out lame in front at Lower Quarry, so close and yet so far. She was in good company. There were quite a few of them that got pulled at Lower Quarry, and a number of them were very well-known names. Doesn't make it easier, though. Just gutting. We had to wait ages for them to get back to the fairgrounds. I asked for an ETA and got told that the ones who needed veterinary attention would get first priority. I figured that was good. If our horse was taking a while, then obviously she was okay. In the meantime, a car pulled up and the driver was looking for Barn B because he needed to find the crew for a rider who was unwell. I started to head off to find the barn and then asked who the rider was. When he said Chrissy Drummond, I just reached for my phone and messaged Keisha Wood. Much quicker. Jenny and Philouette arrived in a while later. They were fine. Vet didn't need to see her, so we loaded Philouette in her trailer and sent her and Potato off home. Then we headed off to our own beds and slept until almost 10. What an experience. I've been taught always to look back and analyse after each ride, what went right and what went wrong. From a crewing point of view, I think we had it pretty much spot on. It's always hard when you're having to slot into someone else's infrastructure. With 2 horses running, we basically separated into 2 crews, with Cindy and I allocated to Jenny and the others allocated to Potato. We were able to source the extra things I wanted, and everything was where it was meant to be. It's a great shame that it finished at Lower Quarry rather than with the buckle presentation, but that's horses, that's endurance. If this was easy, everyone would be doing it. We still have something left to achieve, and hopefully we'll get the chance to do that. Better start saving now. Bye for now.
Hey, it's Keisha. It's 3:53 in the morning. I'm standing outside of No Hands Bridge, and it's a bittersweet morning. Cressy overtimed at the last vet check, so she's not going to make it. Susie Jones also was pulled. Her horse was lame, but I'm guessing it was probably because Susie Jones was pretty hurt. Well, it was just her, the stirrups were really messing with her when she was riding earlier, and her legs were just in a lot of pain. So I'm sure her riding differently probably affected her horse. And I just now went to No Hands Bridge to meet Melanie. It's only 4 miles to the finish from No Hands Bridge, and she happened to be with my friend Victoria Ordway, who's out here in California, and I'm so excited for her for that because Victoria is so dang fun. So I know the last 4 miles she's gonna have a blast, and who knows how long they went together, but it's neat just walking on the trail out here. I don't know if you can hear my feet walking on this, but I'm walking next to the American River. You can see it way down there flowing, and the moon in the sky. It's so bright, and I can't even imagine being able to ride this trail on your own horse that you love so much under this moon and hearing the river. It's awesome. But we're going back to the fairgrounds, going to get the stall ready for Cressy and Saga to come home and rest. And You know, I'm so proud of her no matter what, because I know her overtiming is because she was taking care of him. It was so rough. And every time I saw her today, she was just covered in dirt, and I was so proud of her. So just seeing her do it was like getting a buckle to me. But anyways, I just wanted to give you guys an update, and I'll try to get you guys one tomorrow when we're watching all of the events and when the horses come in through the banquet. But that's it for now, and maybe I'll get some sleep between now and then. All right, bye guys. It's Keisha again. It's 4 a.m. in the morning. I just wanted to give a quick update because I'm super sad. I was just looking at the standings, and I was hoping I'd see Jenny be coming through the finish soon, and I saw that she got pulled for lameness. But Jenny, if you're listening to this, I'm so proud of you, and getting to watch you at every single stop was so great, and I'm so glad to meet you.
I feel so blessed to be a part of this entire experience. And TEVIS is now over. The horses are doing wonderful, eating, recuperating, resting, and so are the people. Until next year.
Hi everybody, this is Chris again, and I know this was a super long episode of the podcast. I wanted to blend some of the TEVIS audios with some of the other ones that were sent in. I hope you're all enjoying Courtney Krueger's ride and tie stories, because I sure am, and Courtney edits those all himself, and I really appreciate when he sends in audios. Thank you, Courtney. I wanted to not thank just Courtney. I want to say a big thank you to all of you for making this podcast happen, because without your audios, there simply would be no podcast. So thank you for all the time and effort you took to create and send in the audio files. It was my goal when I started this podcast to bring young riders and old riders, new riders and seasoned riders together who love covering the ground in the sport of distance riding, whether it is in ride and tie, or if it's in the TEVIS, or if you're a novice rider. Everybody is welcome. It has been quite a journey, a wonderful journey this year, and I am so honored to have gotten to know several of you. It's been great getting to know everybody through messages and emails. I even had Lindy sent me some books, and when Jenny Chandler was out in California, she sent me her New Zealand hat from out there. I just thought that was wonderful. I had no idea that we would make such connections when we put this podcast together. There's also a Facebook group for the Endurance Horse Podcast. So if you get a chance, go over there and check it out, and you can share and see pictures and videos of riders who have been on the podcast. The other goal of mine for this podcast this year, even though I started in March, was to create 12 episodes of the podcast, one for each month of the year. And we have made that goal a month early. If you would like to hear one more episode of the Endurance Horse Podcast this year, please go ahead and send in an audio file. As you already probably heard in Ken Campbell's audio, he asked me if I ever had plans on riding TEVIS, and the answer is no, I do not. Just to see where I'm at, I only did one LD this year. So I'm not some great endurance rider. I'm just somebody who had an idea to create the podcast to bring that community, the larger community, together. The one ride I did get to do this year was very special. It was with my long lost, now found friend, Tara Leroy. Finding each other again has been a true gift from God that I believe He had stored up for this season of my life. I can safely say that the one ride with her was good enough to make a blessed season for me. I feel so honored to have been there when she completed her first ride on a horse that she had dreamed of, bred, and raised. And everything happened just as she said in her audio. A mysterious cold wind did blow right before the finish line at the Louise Rydell. I was so grateful that Lori Oleson shared her book, part of her book, on the podcast. I think it's a great thing that she's done to go chronicle some of the horses and rider stories. Things that really were probably only told around a campfire. And like this podcast, Lori's gathering those stories so that they're not lost and that we can remember horses and riders gone by. So what I'm going to ask you all is, show Lori some love, show her some support. Her books are available on Amazon, and I provided links in the show notes, but you could also directly email Lori at endurancehistory@gmail.com. With that, episode 12 is in the books, guys. Jim and I would like to send you much love and blessings from Wisconsin. Just in case this is the last episode of 2018, I want to wish you all joy, love, and happiness into the holiday season and throughout the new year. Goodbye for now, and happy trails from Wisconsin. This is Chris signing off. Episode 12 of the Endurance Horse Podcast.